Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at what I think is probably the best tank build that you can use for PvP. Let's get into it. First off, the entire build philosophy on this build is going to be withstanding hits and dealing back as many large-scale hits, both damage and impact-wise, that we can. So for that, we're going to be using dual laser rifles on the front and dual laser cannons on the back. We're going to be using the VE66 LRBs on the front, mostly due to their double barrel nature, and we're really just going to be tap firing these. We're not going to be charging them up. The idea is to just pelt them as many hits as we can, as fast as we can. As far as the back weapons go, we're going to be using the VP60 LCSs. The reason I went for those is if we try and fit the VE60 LCAs, we end up having a lot of energy issues, and to try and make them work, we end up sacrificing too many other parts of the build to try and fit them in. As far as the frame itself, we're going to be using the Varel head, mostly due to its AP and armor. AP and armor is going to be the bread and butter of this build. We're talking 17,740 on the AP, and all of the armors, as you can see, are nothing to snuff at. This AC can be hit with dual earshots and then keep trucking like nothing ever happened. For the core, we're going to be using the VE40A, entirely for its attitude stability. This build has a 2620 attitude stability. It's going to take a lot to stagger it, and by the time they do stagger it, we've already staggered them twice, and they're most likely dead. We're going to be using the Mind Alpha for the arms, mostly due to our firearm specialization. We're not really going to have to worry about the recoil control as much on these weapons, mostly because they're not firing too often, so by the time you fire your next volley, the recoil isn't really going to be an issue. The only reason we're not going to be using the Noctrahairs is mostly just because of arm overburden. Just so you know, I originally tried doing this with Tian Lao arms, and however, it did look like that slight increase in firearm specialization really does go a long way. I went from making only half of my shots to making 3/4 of my shots with just a simple arm change, so definitely want to go with that. As far as the legs are concerned, we're going to be wanting to use the heavy tank legs. That way we can be firing all of these off in rapid succession without having to stop. As far as the FCS is concerned, we're going to be using the WLT001, mostly for its balance across the board specs. As far as generator goes, we're going to be using the VE20C. Main reason is going to be for the energy firearm spec, which multiplies our energy weapon damage. Only reason we're not using the 20B is because of an energy shortfall. As far as expansion unit, we're going to want to use the assault armor on this. The name of the game is to get in as close as possible, hammer them as hard as possible, and stagger them and kill them. Assault armor will help us in that endeavor. In testing against trying to find ways that you could easily try and counter this build, it's very hard to do. As you can see in the videos, even whenever someone tried to counter it by bringing a missile barge, it just ran up and killed them anyways. In my testing, the only real build that you can try and kill it with is other close in-your-face tank builds with heavy-hitting weapons. However, I find if you do see someone using this build, just switch your back lasers down here to the LCDs. The shotguns just do a little bit better if you don't have to worry about an enemy that might try and run or play the range game. But for more often than not, when you're fighting enemies, you really want to keep that adaptability. So we're going to be wanting to use the LCSs predominantly. Overall, this build seems to stomp most people in PvP. It's very hard to counter, especially if you're fighting on a place like Bona de Dunes. Now, if you're playing on something like Xylem City, might be a little bit more at a disadvantage. However, on the more flat maps, this build seems to be king, and it's really hard to beat it with almost anything else. The build itself is pretty mindless to play. You're more or less just driving, overboosting at the enemy, and just unloading everything you have. Occasionally going for the charge shots on the back weapons when you fish in for those really nice hits. And overall, it's just a very easy build to use and learn. I feel like if you're having a lot of trouble in PvP, you could use a build like this, and it would probably step up your win-loss ratio exponentially. If you guys do run into anything weird out there that seems to cream this more often than not, drop a comment in below and we're going to see if we can do anything about that. Other than that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and otherwise, I'll see y'all in the next one. See you.